Sure. Just for the benefit of our guests today, in committee we sit, in the chambers we stand, but as this is a committee in a chamber, it's confusing. But I'll follow my colleagues. I'll follow my colleagues' lead, and I'll sit. A very good afternoon at this stage to all of you, and particular thanks to An Cathaoirleach for the generous use of his chamber. And on behalf of my colleagues in Fine Gael, Senator McGahan is here. Deputy Richard Bruton unfortunately can't make it. He's attending the funeral of a former member of this House, Mary Jackman, in County Limerick, to whom I, particularly her family, may she rest in peace. I really welcome the opportunity to hear from you today. I don't know about my colleagues, I'm sure they'll speak on their own behalf, but I'm very inspired by what I've heard and the confidence in which you delivered your remarks to us. I assure you that 16-year-old or 17-year-old or 18-year-old me would not have been able to match your confidence. And that's going back to the mid-90s, and I can be absolutely certain of that. So you are no doubt a credit not just to your families and to your organisations whom you're here with today, but also your schools. So well done. The passion and commitment that you've shown, not just today, but in recent years as organisations in the theme of climate action and cajoling members of all parties and none into making meaningful change has been and continues to be, I suppose, an opportunity for all of us to reflect on who we represent and why we are here. There are so many things that need to be done that it seems overwhelming. Particularly in recent years, we launched a climate action plan in 2019. It was updated, I think, with more realistic vigour last year, and this committee spent a huge amount of time going through it and improving it. And I think we can all be absolutely certain that we made a very valuable contribution. But within that, there were a great deal of youth voices being heard. And I think it's really important that we continue with engagement like this. I'm very fortunate in my constituency. In Fingal, I have one of the youngest constituency in Europe, believe it or not. And on that basis, alongside with Dublin West, I am often acutely aware of the age profile of my constituents, and which is why I sought membership of this committee, and which is why I sought spokespersonship on climate action within Fine Gael, the party I represent. I think I could go on and talk about all of the various actions within the climate action plan, but I have heard very clearly that you believe as a group, as two organisations and as individuals, that there may be things that we're not doing enough of. And I certainly recognise that. As I mentioned, sometimes when you assess everything that needs to be done in order to reach carbon net zero, you're talking about such fundamental changes to the way in which we live our lives, the way in which our society operates, the way in which our businesses operate, and indeed the state itself and its responsibilities. And that's why sometimes it can appear overwhelming. But one of the greatest areas of impact that I believe that we as a legislature and indeed as individual members of Parliament is to ensure that our energy market is decarbonised and to ensure that it is as reliable as it possibly can. There were mentions made of that during the course of your contributions this morning. And I think we are uniquely placed in Europe and indeed in the world to harness wind energy, particularly off our Atlantic coasts. There are a number of schemes that are currently before planning, and thanks to members of the Oireachtas, there will be a new Maritime Area Planning Authority established shortly, and that will, I hope, speed things up. But decarbonising our energy grid is essential. But there is one slight issue, and that issue, I think, has been highlighted by the unjust and unjustifiable war on the people of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin. And that is that we are reliant upon so many others, not just for gas, but for electricity. And we are going to increase that reliance with further interconnectors between ourselves and France, for instance. And it introduces an interesting conversation in Ireland, one that we haven't had since the days that were back in, I think it was in Wexford in the 1980s, when nuclear power was discussed and there was a campaign and we said no, and that's absolutely fine. But are we now going to be importing nuclear energy from France, which is 78% powered by nuclear, or are we going to have a meaningful debate about the what-ifs? And when it comes to energy security, you cannot afford to have what-ifs. And those what-ifs are, can we rely upon our European partners in 10, 20, 30 and more years? So those are questions that we have to have. And I do believe that we as a nation should be able to have a conversation about something without making a commitment to do something. And in relation to nuclear and that general conversation, it's not only overdue, but I believe we should be having it. And I think that's important in the context of the debate that we have about energy security. Storage and other matters that have been mentioned by some of the contributors are absolutely worthy of consideration. And I think as a nation, we need to lead in research and development. We have a unique economy across the globe. We attract a massive amount of foreign direct investment, and we are the headquarters of so many different firms and organisations across the world. Therefore, it is incumbent upon us to continue with that and incentivise the research and development in battery storage so that we can be ready for the day when the sun doesn't shine or when the wind doesn't blow. I'm almost finished, Chairman. I appreciate your leeway. In relation to, there were some comments in relation to research at university level. Absolutely agree with you. And I can assure you that Minister Simon Harris agrees with you. And indeed, the things that we are seeing happening at third level now will benefit you directly, touch wood, dependent upon your chosen path after your leaving certificate. And what I would say is we have a unique opportunity in Ireland for those who might say, well, we're an island off the coast of Europe, we're 5 million people or 6.5 million people on the island, we are a drop in the ocean. But we have an extraordinary reach in our voice. And that's why listening to you this morning is inspiring, because I know that that inspiring voice, that influential voice on the world scene will continue. There's people here, and I'll be quite honest with you, sitting in this seat for the very first time. I've never sat in this chamber before. And as I joked with Minister Hackett when I sat down, there's only really one chair in this auditorium where I would be very comfortable sitting, and the chairman is sitting in it. I'm not convinced that I ever wish to sit in these seats, no disrespect to my esteemed Shannon colleagues, but I'm quite happy with the chairs in Dáil Éireann.
You might be looking for it someday.
True. True. I suspect I have just ruled out transfers from any of the... But that being said, you know, it is an important opportunity for you. It's a wonderfully important opportunity for us to listen to you and to the potential that is within each of you. I see business leaders, I see politicians maybe, I see influencers in the non-social media sense sitting before me, and you should really be proud of that. To conclude, Cathaoirleach, you know, we have, as I kind of mentioned, our influence, scientific expertise, literature, art, economic, social justice, and much more that we bring to the table in terms of our international engagements. And I believe that another such opportunity exists for us to lead on climate change. And my colleague, Antónis de Leo Varadkar, said a number of years ago that we were climate laggards and that we were going to change that. And we are. And with the help of the three parties in government, and indeed the great support and influence that has been brought by all other parties and to none to that debate, particularly within this committee, we can and will continue to put forward meaningful policies that actually make a big difference to everybody in their journey to reduce their own carbon emissions, to have knowledge of where fashion or clothing or materials come from, which of course is an important part of the work of the Climate Committee in its deliberations over the Circular Economy Bill. But what I would say is your continued engagement is really important. Don't be afraid to send an email, for instance, to all members of the Oireachtas or to the committee if you have suggestions, because I know we will take them seriously. Thank you. Cathaoirleach.